Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Out of the Park 23 as the Minnesota Twins. And it is the end of the 2027 regular season, where the Twins were cruise control for the division. We go 96 and 66, win the division by 26 games. And yeah, it's really kind of all there is to it. The White Sox end the year 56 and 106 after starting the year 12 and 3. I don't really know what else to say about that other than obviously 44 and 103. It's not quite Cleveland Spiders bad, but it's I think the worst pace probably since them of looking at the roughly 46 47 win season is real rough. So we did have two extensions that I signed kind of around the All-Star break. The first one is Joan Duran, which is just a 5-year, $17.5 million per for a total of $85 million. Or no, it's $87.5 million. And if I'm being honest, I don't really love the deal. It's probably the first one I've signed that I signed because I think it's fun for the most part, but also because we're going to go into this more in a couple of years. I think kind of when we are at 10 years, I want to come back in and look and see kind of what all has happened. Even you could tell kind of how strikeouts have started to come up because we've got a couple of our people on here. Nola's gone on here twice. DeGrom. There's the Corbin Burns this year. It's the second high strikeout per 9. But for the career, you need 500 innings. So there's Joan Duran, 14K per 9. It's just nutty. And he's currently 8th on this list of career strikeouts in 741 innings. Next lowest is Johan at 1308. I want to see if he can get to second or third place on this list because I think that would be super fun of just kind of having a guy be there for so much. Seeing Gomez here is pretty fun. Aaron Nola as well as on this list. But the deal that I want to talk about a little more is Mario Adrian. So obviously coming off of a very good year, I did this kind of in July, but so the crazy thing about this is even with there's a couple months in here where he was pretty bad. So August rough, first career month in April was rough, but he had 4 months out of the year where he was 130 OPS plus or higher. So yeah, and this is his first career year. He's 23. Obviously, these ratings are nutty. The deal is 10 years, $166 million. If the game would have let me go more than 10, I probably would have tried to do that. Because what I think the thing to notice about this is a guy like this is going to command way more than $21 million a year. There's just no way that he's not going to. And the other thing that's important to look at here is a lot of my money is falling off the books in kind of these 2 years right now. And the big money deal for him doesn't start until 2032. So I think that's important for this contract to just kind of pay out the arbitration years maybe a little bit early. And then really he's the first kind of next core piece for me. And I think it's really fun because this was the first international free agent that I signed. The power hasn't fully developed. It fell down. The eye is, I think, the biggest thing that's hurt us is that the eye is only looking at 50 potential instead of that 65. But I mean, 80 contact, 80 gap power, 65 home run power was turned into 33 homers and 103 RBIs this year. Yeah, he's never going to walk a ton, but I'm excited that my first ever international free agent signing has worked out as well as that one has. As far as All-Stars, we didn't have a ton this year, which was a little surprising. to me. We didn't get off to a super great start this year. It's really been more the second half of the year where we've played quite a bit better. You can see kind of where we've had these couple of streaks here and here where it's really been that upward trend for us. Corbin Burns had a very, very good year. Definitely a very real chance he wins the Cy Young this year. 17-7, 220 strikeouts. You saw the 10.3K per nine being pretty high as far as Twins' career years. Very well deserved. Blake Hunt had probably his best career year. He's had back-to-back years that have been really good. I forget, did he have a 5-WAR year? No. He has not yet cracked the 5-WAR threshold, but I mean, this is a catcher I'm very happy with. This contract was probably the best one that I've signed, I think, was that 7-year, $58 million contract I signed him to before last year, because with the rough valuation of $8 million per WAR, even his worst year that he's had for me was worth 16 to 18 million dollars, and I'm never going to pay him more than 10, because he's a good enough catcher that if the bat isn't there in a given year, then that's totally fine. So that's really nice to see. It looks like the eye has gotten a lot better for him. Is that true? Yeah, it's gotten better, where it was kind of this 55 for a while, and now it's up to 60. So yeah, he's a great elite catcher, well-deserved All-Star. This is his second All-Star appearance, back-to-back for him. And then Sal Frelick is also an All-Star this year, 2 out of the last 3 years. But the thing for him is that a lot of his production was early on this year. He's really struggled in the second half of the year. The ratings are coming down. Arbitration estimate next year is $9.2 million. I think the odds of me paying that are very, very low. So, All-Star for him. Great to see him having these couple of good years. But, yeah, I mean, even though this trade that we made with Milwaukee way back, 2023, what was this, the Stashak trade, has worked out pretty well for us, I think, all things considered. McLeod, they've kind of left in AAA. He's been really good there. Will Sands is in the White Sox organization now. Gibson Long has been kind of whatever. Stashak had a couple of, kind of had one good year for them yet this year. He's been, looks like, pretty on and off. It's a starter for Philadelphia this year. Interesting. But yeah, obviously we've gotten a decent amount of good years out of Frelick. Ethan Murray is kind of a depth piece. I don't think he's going to end up actually being anything. Barrios had a good year in A-ball this year. But Luis Lara is a piece that's turning into something, I think, where the bat isn't going to ever be much, but if you can be below league average with the bat and still be worth 3.7 WAR, that's really good. Is the 65 rating there? This trade's looking like it's going to be one that paid off kind of right away, and I think Lara is going to get some work at the major league level. I think that's going to end up happening. As far as kind of the rest of the team, if we look at our lineups, Gutierrez had a very good year as my backup catcher this year. That's really nice to see. It lets me give Blake a little bit more time off. And yeah, it's just really nice to not feel like you're going to be kind of a black hole at this spot when you don't have to play your starter, which I was worried about. Obviously, did not have a good year last year at all, but quite a bit better this year. He is a leader, which is nice, and a decent enough defensive catcher. Let's just go ahead and sort this by WAR, actually. So Joshua Baez had a great year for us. It's 33 home runs to tie for the team lead with Mario Adrian. And yeah, really, this is even with him fading at the end of the year. You can see these last 5 games were pretty rough. But yeah, I mean, just a very, very good year. He's a plus with the gloves, 6 zone rating. There's a non-zero chance he even wins a Gold Glove this year. And yeah, I mean, this is I got Max Kepler back more or less after a couple of years, except with a much better batting average. So yeah, I mean, very, very good year. No complaints there. We talked about Hunt. Correa has a pretty good year for us. One of his better hitting years, actually, in a while, which is interesting considering how far these ratings have fallen. What does OSA say? OSA is about the same on him. So, obviously, this is the decline portion of the Correa contract. He's worth, but I mean, the 4.5 WAR for this year in 100 games, definitely you take that. Is another very good defensive year. But I mean, obviously, all of the ratings are way down from. You can look at him in 2022. It's the eye has about stayed about the same, but the defense has gone down, contact is down, power is down, and he's still signed for 3 more years with the team option as that third year, or the player option as the third year. Hopefully, he turns this down. I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't opt into this, unlike real life where he's not going to opt into that deal. But yeah, just one more year at 38, and then we'll sort of see. But it's been a great run keeping Correa around. Where if we go to Major League with Minnesota, he's given us 31 WAR worth of value in those 6 years. So can't complain there. I think there's a pretty decent shot he ends up in the Hall with this career. So that will be interesting to kind of see what happens specifically there. 200 home runs. Be nice if he could get to. I mean, he's not going to get to 300 though. He might get to 1,000, or yeah, he might get to 1,000 RBIs. I think by the end of the contract, maybe that helps him get in. I would like to see him get in the Hall in this save. That'll be fun. Byron Buxton doing kind of about what I expect him to do. He only had the one injury. I mean, really, the playing him that limited amount of going to having somebody who I can play every couple of days. I think something that's been really helpful, because this was the spot where I didn't really have somebody who I could do that for, and he gets hurt pretty quickly into that. But I mean, I think I've done a pretty good job keeping him healthy. Where outside of kind of these first couple of years when I wasn't as aggressive with backups, you see we had these significant injuries, but 25, pretty healthy. 26, pretty healthy. 27, missed a month, but that's it. So that's nice to see. Signed through 28, so we have one more year with him. I don't see us extending him past that. I think I have some options as far as center fielders go that I don't have to be as conservative with. We'll see what he wants for a contract. I'm definitely not opposed to bringing him back, but we'll sort of see what's going on there. Miranda got off to a terrible start this year. So the first couple of months, like when we looked at him in the last video, was just awful, right? April and May were both terrible months. But then he was back to being Jose Miranda the last 4 months of the year with the 125 OPS plus in each of those months. So, yeah, I mean, this is kind of really about what he's been. So, no real complaints other than the be nice to not get off to that terrible of a start again for him, but kind of is what it is at that point. Contract is 2 more years at this point before we have to make a decision on him. And there's some question marks, I think, here as well. Peralta kind of talked about Kirilloff with a nice little rebound season after the last 2 being as well. Really, 26 was awful. 25 was not great. So first time he's been above 2 WAR since the monster year in 23 that he had. I do think that I'm going to look to move him in this offseason because I have some pieces coming up that I'm excited about. Hopefully, the fact that he had this pretty good year here will allow me to trade him because the contract isn't great. I guess it's a 357 for a guy who's had a coming off of a pretty good year. So maybe it's tradable. We'll see. But I do think that's a thing that's likely to happen. Colton Wong had a pretty good year for us for the role that he played, which was being that guy that I signed at the beginning of the year with the Royce injury, and then just kind of being a backup infielder who plays a decent amount of games with the amount that Royce plays in center. So, yeah, really good value out of him this year. Royce was fine. Kind of about what he was in 25, or was that kind of slightly below average bat, good defensively, is obviously very good at second, fine at short, fine in center. Obviously, he's not going to win another Gold Glove like he did last year, but that's because of health, I think, more than anything. It's nice to see him having a decent little career that he's developed here. Gutierrez, we talked about. Amaya was kind of about what he has been. 1.7 is a lot, though, for the role that he plays. I don't know if I really have anybody else I want to play his role, so we'll kind of see there whether he comes back or not. Kavoko's gone. 1.2 million for this, didn't hit lefties. No thanks. On the pitching side of things, so a really funny thing happened here. Of when I was doing my playoff roster, Corbin Burns wasn't on it. And I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, this is my ace. Yeah, we're just not going to use him in the playoffs. That'll be fine, right? So we obviously talked about him. He had a nutty year. Gomez had a very good year. Maybe his best by ERA season. The BABIP's super low, which is obviously a little bit concerning that maybe this isn't. And obviously we can see with the FIP that he got a little bit lucky this year. But for the most part, he's been about the guy that he always has been. It's the roughly a strikeout an inning, doesn't walk a ton of guys. I still really like the contract that he's on to be my number 3 starter. I do wish that he could pitch more innings. It feels like I'm a little bit aggressive with his hook. That might be something that I look into because he hasn't pitched more than 160 innings in a year, I think, ever. Yeah, he's been 128 till this was his career high is this 159 this year. But it's been good. It continues to be good. That's really nice to see. Jose Alvarez got off to a rough start, but has been quite a bit better in the second half for me. Still kind of the same type of guy as last year. Has a low BABIP. Doesn't strike out a lot of guys. Doesn't walk a ton of guys either. The walks came down from last year, which is nice to see. I think that he's always going to be a higher FIP guy because he doesn't strike out that many people. So that'll kind of be something to keep an eye on. But I do think that German Marquez is a pretty good kind of analog for him as far as a guy that doesn't strike out a ton either. Though Marquez does strike out, it seems like a decent amount more. But the super high movement, high control. Not a great year for Marquez. Maybe the worst one he's had ever, maybe here? Yeah, this is his first ERA above 4. So not a great year for him, but the FIP says that it's pretty similar to the other years. This is the highest BABIP that he has had here. So yeah, I think that he's still pretty much is the same guy. Signed for 3 more years after this one, assuming he does opt into this. That'll be interesting in 2030 to see whether or not he does opt into that contract. And then Julius Sanchez was our number 5 guy. He's gotten his ratings have continued to climb, where he could definitely be one of the best pitchers in baseball in the next couple of years. Was roughly league average for me this year. Strikes out 10.2 per nine. Doesn't walk a lot of guys. So yeah, it'll be fun to watch him over the next couple of years develop. My fourth round pick in 2022. A lot of my 2022 draft picks got a decent amount of work. Well, other than obviously Collier is still here, but we went pitcher, pitcher, pitcher. Where Bryce Osmond here in the second round has gotten some work in the major leagues for us this year. Hasn't been super great, but 364 BABIP. The FIP is better, but I mean, we'll sort of see. And then obviously we also had Levi Weissman getting some work, where he was pretty good in AAA. I tried using him out of the bullpen a little bit towards the end of the year, and he wasn't super good there either. Because I wanted a lefty because I'm very worried about Moran, who had a not good year this year. But we will go into pitching a little bit more and talk about that. So out of our bullpen, Grinchak definitely turned around the last half of the year. Wasn't super great to start the year, but has been very, very good since. Pretty normal stuff for him. His BABIP is high in general, but even higher than normal this year. ERA FIP pretty similar. Not a good year for Duran, honestly. I think this has got to be his first ERA plus below 100. But the FIP is pretty close to in line with where it has been over the last 5 years. Obviously, this first year is this crazy outlier. But he worked 135 innings, 216 strikeouts. Walks were, kind of about where they have been. The BABIP's just 20 points higher than any of the last 3 years. So we'll sort of see, but I don't expect to use him much differently. Colby White had another very good year. He doesn't seem to really like being in the closer role, but other than that, he's been super, super good. The FIP is actually a little bit more concerning to me. Yeah, only a 232 BABIP here. Though he's been a pretty low BABIP guy in general. I wish he didn't have this circle change, honestly. I feel like it probably isn't doing anything good for him. Nardi had a pretty good year as well, though his FIP's also a little bit higher. Strikeouts are up. And I really like the back end of my bullpen. Juan Nunez had a much better year than his stint last year, though the FIP is actually higher. Yeah, because this obviously was an unreal BABIP. This is probably about more normal for him. I think we can get a couple of good years out of Nunez at this point. Luis Ortiz was called back up at the back end of the year and was really good. Of course, I don't actually know if he gave up did he give up any runs in the majors? He gave up one when I called him back up in August. Because I was going through some people and he got his shot again and was good. This is one of the biggest stories of the year, I think, for my bullpen, is this guy, Miguel Angel Boedas, 24-year-old, who was an absolute stud for us this year. 51 innings, 1.23 ERA. The FIP's only 2.66. The BABIP is low, but it doesn't seem super out of line for him. Didn't walk a lot of guys. He was a very good stabilizing force for us. Moran is a concern point for me. The FIP has always been high. And this year the ERA kind of caught back up to it. The BABIP's even lower than it has been. Walks too many guys. He actually would get paid this offseason out of options. He's done. The problem comes in that I don't really have any other lefties. I might have to look into trying to acquire a left-handed reliever this offseason. Inigo Diaz is also a concern point, where 15 innings was just awful. Where it was just every time that I used him, he was giving up runs. Like, I feel like he should be really good. And 25 he was. But outside of this, it's just been 6.5 ERA last year, 8.5 ERA this year. I'm not really sure what to do because of how little time he's actually been on the major league roster. He's still not salary arb eligible, so he'll probably float again, but he's might be out of options. Yeah, so that'll be another piece. Maybe I look to see if he has any trade value or anything like that. See if I can turn that into a lefty reliever. Um, Green was up a little bit, didn't do a whole lot. The Bentley was not great. He might get another shot though as my lefty, but he kind of has that same problem where he's also out of options and hasn't really proven it at the major league level. So we'll sort of see. Austin Love, wow, he struggled back half of the year in AAA. He was decent for me, kind of about league average. Just a higher than I would expect BABIP. Those BABIP at the major league level has been pretty high, it looks like. So that's maybe we'll sort of see what happens there. But yeah, that's kind of the setup of the team. I mean, obviously, pretty good year for us. Third in runs scored, tied for the league lead in runs again. Starters were really good. The bullpen started to figure it out a little bit more towards the end of the year, what our kind of options were. And then, yeah, Rodriguez is finally almost back and is now probably. I don't know how viable of an option he really is because I think especially Ty Evans has played himself more into my picture because he's a more interesting center fielder, I think, and played pretty well for us when we had our outfield issues at the beginning of the year. So that's interesting as far as that option goes. We'll sort of see. As far as the playoff picture goes, it's again the NL West. Somebody needs to become good here, please. Because you'll remember last year the Giants won this division with let's see, let me look and see how many wins. They had 78 wins last year. They're 4 games worse and won the division again. So I would like somebody to be good here, if only so that we don't have the Mets missing the playoffs with 90 wins, the Braves missing the division again. I think they won like 88 last year as well and missed the playoffs. So some of that stuff is. I would like there to be some more wins here. But like I don't know which of these teams will actually be able to make that turnaround. So looking at the playoff tree, the Twins are the #1 seed in the American League this year. So we get the bye, get all of our pitchers rested. We get to set up Burns in game 1. So that's nice. The Padres are good this year, the Diamondbacks. So we actually have a 3-3 split over here. And actually a lot more National League teams, old National League, being good this year. 5 of them in the playoffs over here, and just the Red Sox representing the old American League in the new National League. But yeah, this will be a fun playoffs. The next episode will be going over how we do there. Hopefully we will actually be able to do some damage again. I think this is a pretty good team. I think that we have a lot of bats that are hitting pretty well right now. I think really if Frelick's struggling and Royce is struggling, but everybody else is having pretty good years. I like our pitching staff. I like the back end of our bullpen. Yeah, I think this is a team that can do a lot of damage. So we'll see what that is in the next episode. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.